You know, to an outsider, us cyclists do some pretty bizarre stuff. The funny shoes, the tight-fitting clothes, and the odd-smelling balms and creams we spread on ourselves.
I kind of get a sense that you're about to talk about Floyd's of Leadville and their CBD balms.
Indeed, I am. You know, I had a friend spend the night recently who was complaining of some muscle soreness, so I offered up some of my Floyd's balms. I have the cooling and warming blends, you know. And she took one whiff and was like, thanks, but no thanks.
Really? I love those. Admittedly, they have a strong menthol aroma to them. And they, maybe it's just because I'm a cyclist, but I don't think those smells bother us because, like you said, Hottie, it's part of our bizarreness, so we're used to it.
That's right. But there is a solution, and it's right there on the pages of floydsofleadville.com. Those same great balms come in lavender and arnica, which should be a little easier on the nose of a non-cyclist.
Yeah, I guess there are people out there who do not ride bikes. Maybe I'll meet one day. But for now, I'm sticking with the strong stuff. Give me all you got, Floyd's, because I love the way the standard cooling and warming blends relax my sore muscles and how the menthol reminds me that I am indeed a cyclist.
Check out all of Floyd's fine balms and lotions at floydsofleadville.com. Use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount. And thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of the show.
And we're super happy to announce we'll be title a sponsor again for season 5.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 25 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Hotton, Hottie to most.
And I'm Fatty, and this episode is part 2 of a two-parter with the new Leadville race series Race Director Tamira Jenlink. We get a job description from Tamira, which is important. I mean, let's find out how much she has on her plate. Suffice to say, it is a full meal. We also get her vision for the Leadville 100. What's it going to look like 5 years from now? But first, this is kind of a special episode for Hottie and me. You know why, Hottie?
Well, we were planning on this being a 25-episode season, so this should be the season finale. But of course, it's not. We're going to do an additional 3 episodes even after this one is over.
That's right. And there is another more obscure reason. This is our 105th podcast episode. I know most podcasts celebrate their 100th episode, but in the same way, the 100th mile in the Leadville 100 just means you've still got the gutter and the boulevard to navigate. We let the 100th episode on this show go unremarked. But since there are 105 miles in the race, I think it's worth noting that this is our 105th episode of this show.
It is. And it's worth thanking our sponsors for the fact that all of them have re-upped for a 5th season, which means that you and I don't have to spend any time at all pretending to be salespeople.
Which is good. Instead, we can focus on this highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country.
And that brings us to the other group we want to thank, our listeners. Thanks for supporting us, supporting our sponsors, and sharing this show with your friends.
And here's the easy way you can share the show. Just remember leadville.fm. That will get you links to every podcast platform out there, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify to Stitcher to everything else.
Another way you can support the show and share it with your friends is with the Season 5 Leadville Kit, which is going to be available for pre-orders soon.
Yeah, but first we're going to be asking our listeners, that means you, for some help in choosing the design. Hottie and I have been working with DNA to design a great-looking, easy to spot in a field of 1,500 people kit. We've been through 3 iterations with the designers, and we've narrowed it down to 3 amazing designs.
And any of these designs would be a great final design. Fatty, we could say we've got our season 5, 6, and 7 kits ready to go.
And that would be presumptuous. So we're not going to. Instead, we're going to ask our listeners to let us know which design you like best. Just go to leadville.fm/jersey and select the one that is your favorite.
Now, the polls will be open just for kind of a short time. So quick survey here, just a few days. So that URL again, leadville.fm/jersey. In episode 27, we'll announce the winner and show off details for the rest of the kit. And in episode 28, we'll put that kit up for pre-order.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, Hottie, we're not really having to do any of the work to make this happen, which is good. We're not salespeople. We're also not jersey designers, and we for sure are not fulfillment pros. DNA Cycling has done all the design work, iterated on our feedback, and when we're ready to produce the jerseys, they're going to create the store that folks can buy our kit, and they will then do all of the shipping. That way, Hottie and I can focus on podcasting and let DNA do what they do: design, produce, sell, and ship award-winning kits.
And our listeners can get started on their own 2022 kit design by going to dnacycling.cc and clicking the custom apparel menu. Be sure to let them know the Leadville podcast sent you. Our guest this episode is the new Leadville Race Series Race Director Tamira Jenlink. Hopefully, you listened to part 1 of our conversation. Welcome to part 2. This second half is more visionary in nature. Instead of talking about what happened race day, we lean more towards what's going to happen.
Yep. We're getting to the long-term issues like Leadville community goodwill, permitting, inclusion, and the biggie. How does the Leadville 100 evolve, yet keep what has made it great for all these years? Part 2 now with Race Director Tamira Jenlink.
And kind of in this realm is where I want to start to talk about what feels like an important piece to me as a racer who's been out here many times on this course. Let's take care of each other.
Tamira, again, thanks for coming on the show. You're talking with two guys who have never, ever put on any type of decent-sized event. We have no clue how it's done. And, of course, we get to sit here and ask you all the questions. How are you going to run the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country? That's what we get to do. So, again, thanks for agreeing to do this. So for those of us who've not been a race director, don't really know what it's about, what is your job? What does your job entail? What's your coverage area, if you will? What are the things you get to manage as a race director of the Leadville Race Series?
I think my answer to that question has drastically changed in the last 4 weeks. As you both know, I stepped in 3 days before the stage race into this role. And I thought I knew what went into it. I've even managed a small event, was a partner in a small half marathon on the Front Range. If I had to answer it, like, it's logistics, it's putting together the course, how is that course going to play out, not only for the beginning to the end of the athlete experience, but the volunteers who are on course, how are we creating support? How are we creating support for the crews to show up and be there with their racers, and the racers to have their family? There's so many logistical pieces, and it turns out a super lot of little fires all along the way, all the way throughout, to kind of address and put out, if you will. And I think some of it is predictable. We can decide we got to set up course markings. Okay, we got to figure that out. We've got to make sure there's enough food at every aid station. Is there enough volunteers at every aid station? Is the timing set up at the right places? Do we have our splits set right? There's so many layers to what puts an event. If we just talk about the LT100 mountain bike, what makes that all flow from beginning to end? How
wide is your net? Is your net all the events that happen in Leadville? Is it all those events plus the qualifiers? How much oversight are you trying to tackle?
I have all the races in Leadville plus Trinidad. So I'm overseeing everything Leadville. And then I also have under my umbrella the new race, inaugural race this year, coming up shortly in Trinidad, the RAD.
So you're not doing just mountain bike races. You are doing essentially everything that is in the Leadman Leadwoman event, and as well as the new RAD bike race. That's a full-time job, no question about it. It is, as you mentioned, you started just days before the stage race. And that, I would say, is anytime you start a new job like this, it's going to be a trial by fire. But this was a real trial by fire because you started in 2021, which is the year after 2020 race didn't happen, which meant there were all kinds of registration logistics and sort of a restarting of an economy and restarting of people doing things and concerns about health. And I mean, just this was bigger and more difficult and more complicated than ever. Plus, of course, there was the fact that there was the handoff to Mike Melly and then the handoff from Mike Melly. And I mean, I think Hottie and I would agree. Mike Melly was fantastic. We had him on the show and he was incredibly transparent and forthcoming, gave us lots of great information, but it's still a handoff to you. It's easy to lose have some balls fall as you change jugglers. So I guess the question in there is, are you okay?
I am okay, and I'm actually having fun. And that could not be true without Mike. It could not be true without the team that's involved in this whole game and has been in place. Mike was an incredible bridge. He continues to be, as I, pick up today. We just had a meeting about budgets, which, is not something when you start 3 days beforehand that you have time to kind of dive in and train somebody. We're in full go. We're in race mode. So now we're, in moments when we can, picking up pieces. And he's been an amazing bridge, an amazing holder of all those pieces and was dynamic. And I'm not sure that I would have been. Your question is, was I okay or am I okay? And I'm not sure that could have gone as smoothly if it weren't for him. And then for our folks like Quinn, like Michelle, like our full team here, everybody picked up pieces and we moved together. And now we're getting to form our team, which is pretty awesome.
One thing that was different this year that I loved was the writer meeting and the award ceremony being outdoors. I mean, look, the Leadville weather could change that in a heartbeat. I actually loved being outdoors, but I did, sitting there at the award ceremony, I did notice that it seemed off kind of low key. I'm like, man, it just doesn't seem to have the energy that normally does. Now, maybe that's due to just being outdoors and, you don't have all that trapped audio energy going on. But the other thing that was certainly at play was Leadboat and the Steamboat Gravel Race, which meant that, of course, your pros were off and running. They just took off once race day was over. And that probably took away a little of the enthusiasm too. While we don't race with the pros and we don't get to see them all day as we as normal riders are riding, that's the one time when we get to see them go up there like the rest of us, get their buckle, get their hardware, what have you. We cheer with them. They cheer for us. But I think Steamboat kind of took some of that away. I know that Leadboat is becoming a thing now, but is there any thought about how to navigate this so you get your glory, so Leadville still gets its glory and gets to honor all of the winners on the day and get to hold on to some of that energy that's worked hard for the second Saturday in August? Maybe, I don't know if it's loosening up those dates somehow, finding a way to keep your award ceremony whole. Did that occur to you? Is that a thought at all for you folks?
I think it's a lot of things again, Hottie, and I think that is a big question for this winter as well. Is we all love the backdrop of the football field and that arena and the outside arena. I think anytime you create a super open arena without the container of a building, it changes the energy. So that piece I think is real. Leadboat plays a factor for sure. We've got people now thinking about, not just today's race, but tomorrow's race, and how quickly can I get to bed, and how quickly can I get to the next place. So I think all those things are factors. I don't have the answer right this second. And what helps us kind of capture some of that energy and truly celebrate with our folks, and I think there's a lot of layers. Again, we had an awesome day on course, and I talked a lot about this with our team and with athletes, that we had an awesome day and we had a tragic day. We had both things, and that's a factor as well. That plays into energy when it shows up. And again, I find it hard to pinpoint the exact piece, but it's on my mind, and I know it's on our team's mind, of how do we continue to move forward in a way that is celebratory, does create that energy and that vibe. But we saw it even a little bit. There's a little bit of, you never know if this is the anticipatory energy before the race. When we have the initial racers meeting, is it the fact that the container is so big and it's not as contained? Like when we put the walls around something, we can feel the energy more closely. So a lot of good questions. Again, yes, it's on our minds, and it's definitely a lot of food for fodder for this winter of how we continue to refine.
And at least we not forget, Ken and Mary Lee weren't there. I mean, that's another reason why the energy goes out of the room. I mean, that man and her, they mean everything to us racers. As for the racer meeting beforehand, when we come up the red carpet, there's Mary Lee. The day after at the award ceremony, having them around means a ton to us. So I think you're right. It's a totality of thing. It's a cumulative effect that kind of took a little bit of life out of the award ceremony, at least.
Oh, I think it took more than a little bit. Just to thank you for bringing that to point. And I think it is critical for us to name that as a huge component of what has held this race as a container for, we'll be going on 40 years. They have been an amazing force. And while it was fantastic to have them on video, it was still, they were so hugely missed and such a huge container to this whole thing. So thank you, Hottie. That's an important point.
Yeah, absolutely an important point. I want to ask you about, as a Leadville local, not just a Leadville race director, what do Leadvilleans think of us as racers? We descend onto your town for most of the summer at this point. And there is also the Forest Service is kind of sounding an alarm bell and impacts on the natural environment. I'm wondering, are there things that we should be doing as racers and as crew? And are there things that Lifetime should be doing to make sure that Leadville loves the racers like racers love Leadville?
Yet another really easy question. Thanks, Eldon. This is a big one, right? This is a huge one, and it is a big part of me, actually. My desire to be in this role is my love of this community, my love of my backyard, and my hope to be able to bring some of my skills together to hear the community and hear what the community needs. I can't speak for them. I can speak from my own position of what it feels like when we triple and sometimes quadruple our population for a number of weeks in the middle of summer. It is an impact. And sometimes it is a mixed, it's not even sometimes, it is a mixed. Again, it is both full of celebration and joy and great for business, great for different aspects, and it is an impact. And so I think one of your questions was, how can we take care of each other in that? And I think my reminder to myself and to all of us, even as a person here, is our consciousness, our awareness that when I walk in, this is somebody else's community. It happens to be mine in this case, but I think that piece of walking into someone else's backyard, how do I bring my greatest respect and honor and love to that? Which we see a great deal of. But we do not get past the impact of having a numerous amount of people in town for a period of time on, and it is a huge impact. So I think that's a big piece. I think one of my questions that will be ongoing and continual in my role is, what do you need from us? In my hat as race director, how do we work with you all? How do we work together? What can we bring to you? How do we help this feel like the experience it was 20 years ago versus continually, potentially it has the potential to just feel like adding more and more and more. And so how do we get to show up together and figure it out together? So my hesitation is, I can't speak for everybody, but I certainly want to spend a lot of time trying to hear some of those pieces and bring that voice to Lifetime, to our athletes, to our community on both sides, like all the different layers, and trying to be, again, a bridge in that space.
And how about the race's relationship with local government and the federal government, for that matter? Because both of them hold most of the cards. They're the ones that give you permits. So what is your understanding about the nature of the relationship with local and the federal government? And do you feel like we're in a safe place with them at this point?
Safe is an interesting word. I think, again, in my short tenure already, my short time, has been a lot of conversation with Forest Service. And again, opening and hearing, where are we missing the boat? What are we missing? Where have we overstepped? Where can we show up with more regard and more respect? How can we work with you? And so that's been a lot of our conversation in the last 4 weeks. And even within those 4 weeks, there was some tenuous moments that together we figured out how to move through it and found some pathways. Are we safe? I don't know the answer to that. I think we have some continual collaboration to do to negotiate and facilitate and work together to figure out how do we take care of these communities. Like, it's not just Leadville, it's Twin Lakes, it's Twin Lakes Dam, it's the residents who live in and around all of those areas. And how do we communicate more and more? How do we hear those voices? I'm looking at different options of shuttle plans, increasing those plans of how we can decrease impact in different areas. And again, I won't do that in a vacuum. Those are conversations that we'll hold all together with those different entities in those different communities, as well as continual collaboration with the Forest Service in how we continue to move forward.
The more we talk, the more I get a sense of your job is almost as listener in chief, as a race director. There is a lot of listening that you're going to be doing to racers, to members of the community, to other folks in Lifetime, and sort of getting everyone to collaborate with each other a little bit more. I love that is your perspective, and it seems like a lot of your work experience lends toward that. What else in your life and work experience, which is really goes across many different disciplines and many types of work? I mean, you're working on a doctorate, you've been a firefighter, you have been a guide, you've been a coach. What does all of this say about your vision for where you're going to take this race and how you're going to guide this race going forward?
My vision, my hope is to bring the voices together, to continue to steward something that I believe was put out there into the world as a way to give people a place to challenge themselves, yes, do things they've never done before, find belief in themselves. I think we are to be very honest with you, very transparent, I think we're in a very divided world right now. And I think anything that we can do that brings us together and allows us to have a platform to communicate and connect is the most important place we can be. And I think for me, that is really the driving force of what made me say to Mike, I'm interested to talk more about this position, because I saw it not only as a bridge of, from the time I was 18, I actually went to school for chemical engineering, and somebody said to me, you should go check out this place called the Adventure Center at Pretty Lake. And it was a ropes course, an experiential education facility. I fell in love immediately and realized I needed to be outside working with people. And I've been in group development, group dynamics, that kind of arena, wilderness therapy, that whole world my entire life. And the one thing that's been true throughout it is how to bring balance through the outdoors, how to get people connected with their bodies and each other outside. And my skill set, I hope, at this point just lends itself to an amazing platform to show up and connect people. Like, it will be all about everybody in that platform and how we come together, what we can do with it. And I think there's this amazing opportunity that we could all benefit and stand less divided together outside, moving our bodies and connected.
It sure seems like in hiring Tamira, Lifetime was looking for more than just a nuts and bolts person, more than an administrator, so to speak. They wanted a visionary.
We'll have more on Tamira's vision in a minute. But first, I got to say, the product development and rollout never stops with our friends at Shimano. Just as they are coming off their big Dura-Ace Ultegra 12-speed Di2 announcement, here comes more great product.
Yeah. Now, this announcement is not quite as big, and it comes from their Pro line, so it's possible folks might have missed it. Pro has announced a bunch of cool new bike bags for the adventure and racer types. Oh, that's us. In the Pro Team line is a trifecta of bags meant to work together. One for the handlebars, one for the frame, one for the saddle. Combined, you're looking at 5 liters of storage, which is great for an all-day adventure or for a massive training ride.
In the Pro Performance range, the company has not 1, but 4 new saddlebags from mini to max in size. If you're not bringing lunch and a change of clothes with you, then one of these will do. And it comes from the Shimano family, which means you can trust that these bags will stay in place as you slam down trails.
To check out these bags and more, go to pro-bikegear.com. And a huge thanks to Shimano for coming back for season 5 for the show.
At our Leadville ride, Brandon from the feed handed me a drink and gel combo I'd never heard of before. It is from a company called Never Second, as in science first, never second.
Yeah, I saw those boxes Brandon was handing out. I tried one and the gels actually tasted great, which matters. Now, I'm sure they have a bunch of science behind what they're doing, but what I really appreciate is how easy Never Second made the math. For instance, the C30 pack means that in the box, each gel or drink mix has 30 grams of carbs. So you eat a gel, you drink a bottle, that's 60 grams of carbs, 240 calories. I love when math is simple, especially when my algebra skills have been turned upside down and inside out by altitude.
Yeah. The other great thing about the product is flavor. Brandon handed me a couple of citrus packs. Now, for citrus is not a perfect flavor profile here. I would say it's more like lime light. You can taste the lime for sure, but it doesn't overwhelm the palate, which is important. Flavor fatigue is just one way to trip up a good nutrition and hydration strategy.
Yeah, I would say it tastes kind of like a subtle key lime pie. The feed has Never Second on the site, so get it in your order now so you can try it during the off season. It's a great time to experiment. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville to sign up for a 15% discount on all your orders.
Your new race director has more she wants to tell you, Tamira Jenlink, on guiding and shaping the Leadville Trail 100. Fatty and I want to take a moment to say, chapeau, hats off to Lifetime for hiring a woman. Marilee was the first race director, and now we have Tamira here leading the charge for the Leadville Race Series. And Fatty and I think that is great. And here's why, Tamira. There were 137 women in the field this year. That is less than 10% of the Leadville Trail 100 field. So the question is, should we have some type of affirmative action to get more women racers in the LT 100? Or should it just be like, oh, you go on the lottery and you're in or not? How would you like to see the number of women expanded in the LT 100? How do we accomplish that?
I would say that is a huge topic on my plate as well. Not just women, though. To both of you, I'm interested in equitability. I'm interested in inclusivity. I'm interested in how do we open this up and bridge that experience across multiple gender, capacity, levels, all types of people and humans showing up. So yes, we've grown from 10 women to 137, and it's grown. It's taken time. But there are so many other categories and populations and humans, I guess, that I'm interested in that conversation on a much bigger front than just women. I'm definitely interested in how we continue to support our women to show up in these places. But there's a whole host of categories of human and just human that I'm interested in how we build and bridge that and how we create a space that feels accessible. Like, this is not just about a privileged ability to ride a bike, but certainly there's some components we can't get away from. But there's a lot more than just women that we need to be looking at, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I often wonder what it looks like to look at us. Like, this is a hard race, and we make damn sure everyone knows it's a hard race.
Yep.
This is raw to the nth degree, right?
Right.
And for somebody looking from the outside, they must go like, well, why would I ever want to do that? And maybe what it is, Tamira, is we need to sell that other thing we were talking about earlier. The community, the, hey, I see you, you see me, that stuff, right? Isn't that the universe? Wouldn't that be a more universal approach to getting women, minorities, people of different sexual backgrounds into an event like or any event for that matter, any type of cycling event?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think there's a lot of privilege that goes with being able to ride a bike. There's a lot of privilege that goes with finding the time to train for something like this. And while we train hard, we work hard, our families and our friends give up a lot in that process. And we've been able to name that, but there is a ton of privilege here in this whole piece. And I think it's one of the underlying pieces of our culture currently that we can stand to improve upon. We can stand to open those doors a little wider and look at how we are meeting that inclusivity and bringing what I think is one of the most profound avenues of health and healing into everywhere. Into everyone and everywhere, I should say. So I absolutely agree.
Well, we've really enjoyed interviewing the ladies, the women this year. They've been terrific. Another shout out to them. 71% of the women finished. And the number of gold buckles, Tamara, went up this year compared to 2019. For the men's field, that actually went down. The women actually did better in the gold buckle category. So there is a reason to shout out for the women, the 137 that were there.
Totally. And Ken has spoken about this a lot, about, I think, throughout my knowledge and interaction with him, he's spoken about when you look at per capita of women who actually finish or complete the race, it's actually a very large percentage. It's just that the overall number in the race is a smaller number. But the women are actually doing quite well. So I think that's a great point. And, again, it's back to, I think for me, it's not female, it's not male, it's not non-binary, it's not this gender or this sex or this minority or this race or this ethnicity. It's how do we all show up together and get her done?
Oh, that's a great perspective. A little bit more perhaps of a mundane topic for getting into the Leadville 100, but it's always been difficult no matter who you are. But with the 2020 registration debacle, as Michelle called it on the show, compounded by the pandemic deferrals, there are a lot of ramifications even going into not just 2021's race, but 2022, next year's race. And for our listeners, do they have any chance of getting into the race by lottery? Or is qualifier pretty much how you got to do it, or volunteer, or other ways apart from the traditional, lottery and hope for the best?
Super fair question, super important question, and I think a really important one for all of our athletes. And it's one that I want to hopefully come back and address with a little more clarity, because it's something that we need to tackle and be really clear about how we're going to protect part of that lottery always. And so there is a conversation at play right now around numbers, around how we make sure that lottery is still accessible, even in the moments when there are mistakes or things that have happened that have set us, we're human. We do mess things up. And the reality is we still need to take care of everybody at the table. So we need to come up with a plan on how that's going to happen. I don't have the firm details, but it is another thing high on my list of how we, again, protect and cultivate the athlete experience, which is very much tied to that piece.
Yeah, the problems with the lottery in, I can't even remember what year now, Fatty, I think it was 2020. Yeah, there was 2020. And then we had all the deferrals from COVID, really put the race on the back foot as far as entries. Have you been able to assess yet when the race is finally going to recover from this backlog and kind of be back at, a level playing field as far as lottery and qualifiers and coins and all that goes? When are we going to kind of clear up the remainder of that mess?
It would be one thing if it was just a lottery, but we had a pandemic in addition to that. So we had this dual issue that compounded things. And in all honesty, I think, we will do everything we can for 2022 to make steps where it is regaining. And it may take a year or two to get fully back in there. And I do not want to be evasive. I hope these are questions that we come back when we've actually had time to sit down postseason and hammer them out. And these are the things that I want people to know very transparently. But I also want to be transparent that they're on the burner of discussion, and we need to hammer out some of the details. Right now, what I can safely say is, it's still a little impacted, and we're probably at least a year out from that totally being rectified. We also don't know what the pandemic looks like moving forward. There's some other pieces that are still at play that are impacting things. And as much as we would like to know the answer, I think one of the things we learned last year is what the unexpected, how that shows up in the midst of a mistake.
Oh, yeah. That's a great point. It's so tempting to say, okay, that was something that happened and now things can go back to normal. But you're right. The odds of 2023, everything being back to normal, I mean, honestly, we got to say that, when's the last time that happened, right? So hopefully you will.
And what is normal? Like, what is our normal, and how? I think one of the things that we became very clear about, particularly from more of a medical perspective, is normal might have shifted again. When we embarked on this pandemic, things shifted. And I don't know, personally, just from my own seat, and it's a limited, small seat, very small, I don't know that we know all the playouts of that yet. I think we're still getting all the outcomes and what that's going to really measure up to, and how we balance that with the athlete experience again.
I want to ask about pros. This has become an interesting topic over the last couple years, and I'm going to get to it in a roundabout way, as I love to do, Tamara. There are a lot of great Ken Klober quotes out in the world. You got to dig deep. I commit, I won't quit. You're better than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. Those are all great. I love those quotes. A lot of our listeners love those quotes. But my favorite is one he said in that old gym in 2009 amidst all the hype over the pro race at the front, most notably between Dave Weens and Lance Armstrong. And Ken looked over that crowd and he said,
"Let me tell you, this race isn't about Dave. This race isn't about Lance. This race is about you. This race is about you. We didn't do all this work so you can get out there and be a crybaby." We did this for one reason: to get you across the finish line.
Now, as we've all noticed, there are more pros gravitating towards races that have been started by and supported by just regular folks like you and me and Fatty, who want to ride their bikes hard. And that's great. The pros are great, right? They bring attention to the race. They bring attention to their sponsors. It gives them a few more hashtags on their social media accounts. We get it. But Tamara, I bet there are a lot of folks who stand at 6th and Harrison and say, it's not about the people standing in the front in the Gold Corral. This race is about the rest of us back here. So all that said, what are your thoughts on the increased interest by pros? And how does the LT100 deal with pros going forward as they show more interest in Leadville?
I don't think that was roundabout at all. What are you talking about? I feel like I haven't been able to I feel like these are all things in motion, right? They're all questions that there is never going to be a race, as long as I'm a part of it, and certainly as long as Ken and Marilee are a part of it, that will not be about the whole group and even middle to back of the pack. Like, we're interested in the hard work, the grit, the determination, the people who go out and they get this on their mind, on their list, that we're going to go do this thing. Now, does that mean that the pro who comes out and plays here isn't as worthy and as important as those people? No. This is, I think, the place where we have to find balance yet again of, how do we balance those pieces? And I find, I guess in myself, I try to look at everybody as human versus you're pro and you're this and you're that. And try to look at that human component and how do we hold the container of the human component of this race and not divide it into this category and that category. And that's tricky. But that's, I think that's kind of the space that I'm coming from, and certainly the one that I'm going to attempt to continue forward. And so my idea isn't, no pros, we're only going to focus on this, or no this, we're only going to focus on pros. But it's how do we find the balance of humanity? How do we find the balance of coming together and using this as a place that we grow and become stronger together, that we have those sort of peak experiences, those life-altering experiences, and that's about everybody out there. And so there's some big questions that you're asking, and I don't think they're easy answers. They're not just like, okay, do this. Here's the formula. Here's the recipe. It's going to be about continued facilitation. It's going to be about continued negotiation. It's going to be about continually listening and really hearing each other and finding that space where we come together.
Yeah, and the good thing here, I think, is, while some race directors are already dealing with issues surrounding pros, right? Whether it be pacing issues or strategy issues or how are they treated or how are they seated or how they get in the race or whether they're paying them. Leadville, for the most part, has really escaped any of this. Like, it's never really been an issue. Even when Lance was showing up and Dave Weens was just going crazy, it's always been about from the people silver on back. I mean, that has been the cool thing. I think just preserving that is sounds like your idea.
100%. And I think there's going to be hard conversations. The thing about the human brain is it's built to survive. It's built to move forward. And so it does try to get what it wants. Our brains are pretty sophisticated in that arena. And without a little bit of guidance around how we keep things fair and equitable, we would be just stuck in our primitive reptilian brain and just all out, right? And I think that's the thing we get to do with Leadville is continue to keep that foundation, and it will be a continual negotiation, a continual discussion, and I hope one that we all stay in together.
So last question for you, Tamira. And you've endured this interrogation so well.
Thank goodness.
Imagine it's 5 years from now. You've been race director for 5 years. What is the Leadville 100 now? What is different? What is the same? You've left your mark. What do you hope that is?
I hope that I've been able to continue the experience that Ken and Mary Lee brought, that they started the heart and love and soul and family piece. They use the word family extensively. I think that's a powerful word and an important word. And for me, it's community. But community to me is family. And so I hope that in 5 years, we're just stronger together, that we're talking to each other more on course, that we are supporting each other more and more and more. I think all those things happen out there. I don't think I'm bringing something brand new that isn't there. I hope that I just get to add a little bit of fuel to what's been laid out there, a little bit of growing power to what's there, what's already a part of who we are, and that if there was any legacy that I was shooting for, any mark I could leave, it would just be that I showed up, I was transparent, I was as honest as I could be, and that I helped cultivate that within our whole group, that's a place that we feel like we can come and show up and push hard, but work together and stay connected and continue to build on what Ken and Mary Lee put out there.
Tamira, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. It is really nice to have you give thoughtful answers when you can, and to say no or I don't know when you don't have an answer. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. I'm pretty sure Hottie and I would agree. You have a mic here anytime you want it.
Thank you both so much for inviting me on, for your questions, for creating a platform to share some of these pieces. And I look forward to continued collaboration with you as well. Thank you so much.
Super excited to spend this time with you. Thank you for staying the course those 18 months, showing back up, and let's go dig deep, and let's go get it tomorrow. Yeah!
Thanks again to Race Director Tamira Jenlink. Pretty obvious that putting on the Leadville 100 is more than just hanging a bunch of pink and black striped ribbons between 6th and Harrison and Columbine. We have encouraged her to come on again should she have messages or updates for the Leadville participants, and we look forward to talking with her often.
Yeah, we definitely do. Hottie, I want to mention something about Envy that was really cemented when I was on their webpage recently, and that is how broad of a range Envy covers with its mountain wheels. There are 6 models to choose from, and within those models, there are often multiple options.
Yeah, take, for instance, that M6 series. Within that line, there are 3 models. the M630, the M635, and the M640. Now, the last two numbers represent the inner rim widths. Say you want to build a plus bike, like with 3.0 tires, then you look at the M640 to make sure you really are getting 3 inches of width out of that tire. And by the way, all those widths I just mentioned come in both 27.5 and 29 inches.
Yeah, a lot of great options there. The thing that caught my eye was the M6 Fat. Yep, an NV carbon wheel for fat bikes. It has an astonishing inner width of 85 millimeters for those big fat tires to mount onto. The M6 Fat comes in both 26-inch, yes, there is such a thing, and yes, that is what I ride, and 27.5.
And we didn't even mention the cross-country wheels, the all-mountain wheels, the downhill wheels. Yeah, Envy's got it all covered. For the best in carbon wheels and the best lineup in the biz, it's Envy. That's ENVE.com. Let's wrap this episode, but not this theme. Up next, we'll hear from Tamira's boss, lifetime president of events and media, Kimo Seymour. That conversation is even more wide-ranging.
Yeah, Kimo has thoughts on Leadville for sure, but he also has strong ideas and opinions on the off-road racing and how Lifetime fits in. For now, you can hear from me and Hottie on social media. I'm on Twitter @FatCyclist, Hottie's on Instagram @MichaelHoughton, and of course, we're both on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page.
If you like the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. And by the way, I hope I didn't set off any series in our last show with the whole new iOS update thing, but hey, we'd encourage Apple users with the iOS 15 update to try listening to the show, then asking Siri to share it with your friend. Try it right now. If you're listening to the show, just say, hey, Siri, share this with, and just pick one of your friends and it'll show up in their feed. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's a great way to share the show. I don't know how much Siri knows about Leadville, but Siri hopefully knows a good podcast when it's playing on an iPhone.
You said that name like 20 times in that paragraph. All right. However you do it, telling a friend is the nicest thing you can do to help us spread the word about our independent podcast. To see all the ways you can find the show, it's a super new, super easy to remember domain, leadville.fm. And one last time, be sure to go and choose your favorite jersey for season 5 over at leadville.fm/jersey.
Good luck in your riding, racing, and recovery. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the 2022 starting line.
The historic city of Leadville is the statutory city that is the county seat and the only incorporated municipality in Lake County, Colorado, United States. Leadville is situated at an elevation of 10,152 feet.